Talk.
All the best.
Hi there.
Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us here today. My name is Lynn Dome. I'm Women in Cybersecurity Executive Director. We often go by our acronym WiCyS, WiCyS, and we pronounce it WiCyS like we sisters because that's exactly what we are. We are a global cyber sisterhood. And our mission is to recruit, retain, and advance women in cybersecurity. And we do so by creating opportunities. We have over 5,600 members with representation in over 70 countries. We have over 45, 46 professional affiliates, and those are mini WiCyS organizations. And they're in Africa, Australia, Canada, France, India, Pakistan, the UK, and all throughout the United States. And in addition to that, we have over 160 student chapters. So the opportunities that we provide are training programs, we have conferences, we have scholarships, grants, and awards, not only to our conferences, but to other conferences as well. We have an online member forum. We have special interest groups like data privacy or cyber law, neurodiversity and cybersecurity, all sorts of different conversations, topics, ideas that you want to get involved in. We're here to be able to serve our community with all of that and so much more. In addition to that, we have an internship program, an apprenticeship program. We also have a mentor-mentee program that's designed to upskill, up-level women no matter where they're at in their career, preparing them for their next level of advancement. So if you haven't done so already, I encourage everyone to please check out WiCyS.org, WiCYS.org. Subscribe to our newsletter, become a part of the membership, and join the thriving and growing WiCyS community. So we owe all this and so much more to our strategic partners, and we're pleased today to have Workday come here and present on enterprise security, the BATWOMEN effect. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it on over to our Workday team, and so they could take the webinar from here.
Thank you, Lynn. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our session on enterprise security, the Batwoman effect. Let me just take a moment and introduce myself. I am Shreya Anand, and I am a senior cybersecurity engineer at Workday, part of the enterprise security organization, focusing primarily on security advisory services. And my co-worker and ally, Jagriti Mahante.
Thank you so much, Shreya. And likewise, my name is Jagriti Mahante, and I lead the third party security team here at Workday within enterprise security. So, my expertise is in third party risk management on an enterprise environment. Handing it back to you, Shreya.
In today's session, we will talk about how enterprise security really establishes the relationship and collaborates with various security teams before a technology is approved for use in the organization. So, without further ado, let's jump right in, Jagriti.
All right, good. So, let's take a quick look at the agenda. So, we will go over what enterprise security entails. We will also walk you through scenario and talk a bit more about a day-to-day dilemma we face when we are onboarding or when we have this third-party tools, services, applications. How do we conduct security reviews and ongoing monitoring will be discussed in some of the future slides. And then what's next? What is an ideal state for any organization to achieve, and what does it entail? Will be covered in the two slides that will come ahead. And last but not the least, we will have some time for Q&A, so to answer any questions that you may have. What's next, Shreya?
In today's threat landscape, we need to be really vigilant across many different cyber attacks. Malware or malicious software is any program that is meant to cause harm to the network or services. Now, by phishing, I don't really mean a fish and a rod and a lake, right? It's more when an attacker uses email, it could be SMS, social engineering techniques to really entice a victim to sharing sensitive information. Phishing, even in this day and age, is 35% top of mind for CISOs for business email compromises. It is a hot topic today, and it will be a hot topic tomorrow, and will always be a topic of concern for any organization. DOS, I don't mean a legacy disk operating system, but these are denial of service attacks, which is when the attackers can flood the network with false requests, thus disrupting the business. Man in the middle attacks are when an attacker can intercept the traffic between the client and the server. Luckily, it's not called women in the middle attacks. SQL injections are when adversaries leverage system vulnerabilities to inject SQL statements to gain full access to the database, where they can drop tables, they can exfiltrate data, manipulate the data basically causing havoc. Zero day exploits, these are when the exploits are unknown. But if they can be exploited, they cause serious damage. And the reason they are so scary is because they are not seen in the wild, which means there are no immediate resolution to the vulnerability that can now be exploited. And we have seen a lot of this in the recent supply chain attacks over the last few months. Password attacks, these are when the hackers attempt to steal a user's password and is one of the leading causes of both corporate and personal data breaches. Cross site scripting is a code injection attack where an adversary injects malicious code into the legitimate websites, allowing the attacker to either steal information or even impersonate the user. And last but not the least are IoT attacks. I know everybody loves Alexa, but these devices have a lot of security concerns. In our home or even corporate life, IoT devices become second nature. But the problem is when you don't know the program or software that these devices are running. Typically, they don't have the capability to be upgraded or patched effectively, and they contain a ton of vulnerabilities that cannot be remediated. IoT attacks can assume control of the devices, and it can actually join them to a group of infected devices to create a botnet to launch DDoS attacks. So that's Jagruti right there on the left, and that's me. And this is what our day to day looks like, protecting our organization from different kinds of cyber attacks, making us feel a lot like Batwoman. So, what is enterprise security? Enterprise security provides security requirements, develops standards, reviews and approves corporate IT application, which is done by assessing risks across a myriad of systems, services, and vendors.
Enterprise security also provides security oversight for due diligence and technical reviews of the third parties. And as we onboard them, what do we do for an ongoing cadence on them? And all the supply chain attacks that follow up is also a part of what we do at enterprise security. So our functions is proactive in nature. And by doing these things, we want to ensure that we have the good understanding of the risk we are allowing for an organization. Let's go to the next slide.
But how do we effectively accomplish this, Jagruti?
That's a very good question. Transparency. So it's very important to make sure that as a team, we have transparency with the work that we are doing. And transparency leads to effective security controls for all technologies. Being transparent also helps break the silo. So having those like brown bag sessions, then meeting other teams, just getting awareness about the work that we do within our teams are extremely important. What else can we think about, Shreya?
Strong collaborations and transparency provides multiple security teams good visibility into our processes, which in turn helps in mitigating risks. And it's not just collaboration within security, it could be with anyone in the organization that could be impacted with a security issue. What else, Jagruti?
That's a very good question. So we also have partnership. And partnership is all about working together and not against each other. So with transparency and collaboration, together we can build some rock solid partnership that will help us build the security by design fabric within an organization. I feel partnership is often overlooked, and people are like all the most of the organization people and teams are just working in silos, and you will see there are a lot of duplication of work. And so partnership we can also help resolve the duplication of effort. So it's together we can make our organization a secure place. All right. So we're going to walk you through a scenario that we want to explain to you our current dilemma. And we are going to enact a small scenario for you. And this is a typical conversation that happens on a weekly basis with us. So I'll play the role of a business, and Shreya here is going to play the role of a security engineer within enterprise security. Okay, let's get going. Hi Shreya, how are you? Guess what? I have a vendor that has been hosting all our DevOps data in their cloud. And guess what? They're integrating with so many Workday systems. I'm so excited, and they're streamlining all our processes. Isn't it exciting? I mean, it will just help me to get rid of so much like redundant processes I have.
Um, I think it's great, but let's just pause and take a few steps back. Do they have a SOC 2 certificate? What do their security controls look like? Is there even a pen test report?
I don't know, but we need to onboard them now.
Okay, but I have no idea what my third party risk is without that information. Can we at least ask them about it?
Okay, fine, I'll get you the contact information. That ends the scenario. But this happens to us on a daily basis. Generally, things look great on the face value, but when we start asking questions and analyzing the security controls, that is when we really get to determine A, how much risk is this third party would be bringing in an organization? How mature is their security posture? And if they're going to own our data, it is super important we understand our liabilities with these vendors. Even on my team, I don't have staff, or I don't sometimes understand what the security controls are, even if they are effective or not. And the business keeps arguing to bring in more and more third parties since they need to drive their business growth. This happens on a spectrum in any organization that you see today.
I totally agree with you on this one, Jagruti. When businesses bring in these third parties, they are making decisions on behalf of the company. And we want to make sure that it is driven by risk based decisions.
Totally. I totally agree with it.
What do you think are some of the key functions of enterprise security?
Let's begin with it. When we are working with the third parties at the beginning, we want to make sure that we do the security assessments, which is a due diligence that's performed to determine if the supplier's security posture is based on the organization's security requirements. So we define our own security requirements and controls, and then we do a posture check. And I'll go more in detail in the slide next, in the next few slides. What else, Shreya? What else do we do after that?
A common thing to focus on the technical aspects are technical security reviews, which are typically performed when a service or an application integrates with the enterprise ecosystem that may introduce newer security risks. We want to ensure that we understand this flow of data, all the requirements are met, and the controls are actually aligned to our policies and standards. So, where's the dilemma, Jagruti?
So the dilemma is that the security assessments and the technical reviews are done at the beginning of the process. So it's right when you're onboarding the supplier. So how do we ensure that things don't change as the business grows or adopts these technologies or more data is not getting sent to the suppliers? There's no scope creep. This is done by an ongoing cadence. And there are two aspects of it. There is a periodic monitoring and continuous monitoring. And I'll go more in details in the future slides.
Ooh, that seems like we are doing a lot from a proactive spectrum, right? But what happens when something slips through the cracks, Jagruti?
Oh, wow. Yeah, we are doing a lot. And that's when we have to take into account the incident response. So there is a growing concerns from cybersecurity professionals over the risk cyber attacks pose by, to supply chain is overall increasing every day. And in an event of supply chain attacks or any incidents where the third party application is compromised, third party security incident management process is kicked in and followed. So, how do organizations incorporate this function? So, let's drill down a bit further. Okay. So, the first thing to any security assessment is a simple equation. So, firstly, we need to calculate the inherent risk. Inherent risk is the risk level or exposure that exists before an action or a mitigation, compensate, and control is taken into consideration to mitigate the risk. In this case, any risk that the third party brings in would be evaluated before we look at the security controls of the third party. So factors to be considered would be data classification. What kind of data are we sending them? The type of engagement. Is it on-premise? Is it a cloud vendor? Is it is it just a professional services? The volume of data we are sending. Any regulatory requirement? And there are a lot of these factors that could be taken into consideration to come up with the part of equation where we determine the inherent risk we are taking with these third parties. Once we determine that, we go to the next step of evaluating the actual security controls of the supplier. And so that's when we send them a questionnaire. And every organization could have their own questionnaire, but mostly people use the standardized information gathering questionnaire, which is a methodology to encourage consistent risk assessment across risk domains and categories. And so these questions range from 150 to 1600 questions. So looking around the room, I want you to think about this. If you were a supplier who received 1600 questions, would you answer them all? Probably not. So this is a sparse use case, like financial industry or a heavily regulated industry. It's really up to the organization to decide what level of comfort of information or risk appetite they are trying to capture from these questions to determine their residual risk. And so once we have determined the inherent risk and we have matched it against the security controls that the supplier had, and we also look at third-party attestations such as SOC 2 Type 2 reports, their pen test reports, and then we determine the residual risk. So anything remaining potential risk after all mitigations and control measures are applied is what determines residual risk. And then a risk rating get assigned to that residual risk. And the risks are graded in terms of likelihood of occurrence and seriousness of the impact. The residual risk is also then captured in risk register, which is a log record used to track and monitor a particular risk. The register includes plan for mitigating each known high level risk and assignments of responsibilities for managing the risk. These findings are typically captured in security exception processes, and most organizations have risk registered tied up with their security exception process. By doing all this, it gives us visibility into our third party's security posture. The only questions that remains is how do we ensure that they follow our policies? Shreya, any thoughts?
Yes, that is done via technical security reviews or TSRs, which is an extensive review of the integration to define the security requirements, ensure architecture diagram is always in compliance with our policies and standards, identifying and mitigating these threats, and also validating that the security controls are effective. This is a very complex task and it involves threat modeling, security assessments, evaluating risk, and also anticipating potential threats to the organization. It requires partnership with multiple teams, for example, privacy for compliance, application security for code scanning and analysis through automated tooling to detect weaknesses in the code, performing vulnerability scanning to detect and remediate any vulnerabilities with the service, collaborating with the red team to perform penetration tests for publicly accessible apps or services to ensure that they are secure by design. And last but not the least, tight change control to review detailed change requests, including peer reviews, management approvals, rollback strategies, and also timely communication to our key stakeholders. In our evolving landscape, we have to ensure that all proactive and retroactive controls are in place. And all this work that is done by the organization, right from threat modeling and technical securities, are all proactive in the initial implementation phase of the tool. But what happens after a year? Or maybe 2 years have gone by and the tool has really grown in its use case. So let me jump on to my next slide. And Jagruti, could you please explain what ongoing monitoring means for any organization?
Sure. Phew, there was a lot, especially when it comes to like just reviewing the supplier, doing the due diligence, and even doing the technical reviews on it. So tools evolve as they get adopted in an organization, and it becomes imperative to conduct an ongoing monitoring, which is a regular cadence performed on the third-party application tools and services. It's very important that the organizations make sure and identify what their critical third parties are. Ongoing monitoring is a powerful tool to maintaining ongoing awareness of the information security, vulnerability, and threats to support an organization's risk management decisions. And it entails of two distinct framework. So the first one is periodic monitoring. Now this happens in a specific point in time after an initial assessment has been completed. The frequency of the periodic monitoring may be based on multiple data points and the results of the prior assessments. Also, to confirm the scope if it aligns with the initial approval to prevent scope creep. So, with periodic monitoring, you could do an annual periodic monitoring and make sure that every organization sends their critical third parties a reminder on an annual basis, reminding them, hey, you filled out a SOC 2 Type 2 report last year. Do you have an updated SOC 2 Type 2 report that you can share with us? Do you have a new pen test report that you can share with us? These are the questions we sent you last year and you responded to them. Has any of your technology changed? We also added additional questions, maybe questions related to ESG or GDPR got added. and do you want to answer those questions? It would be wonderful because we want you to make sure that the due diligence are done on an annual basis. So having those relationship and sending them periodic monitoring annually is a great thing. And the second aspect of this framework and continuous monitoring, which is also a subset of ongoing monitoring, actually is a real time checking of changing vulnerability processes. And this is done more with the use of a tools such as BitSight or security scorecard, risk recon. They look at the security breaches, compromised system, open ports, basically gleaning all the information from the internet interfaces of that third party. So together, these is two very powerful tools to make sure that we do an ongoing cadence on our critical third parties. And then the same thing applies on the technical aspects of things. Isn't that right, Shreya?
Absolutely. When we review the architecture diagram for implementation, things evolve. And as the tool gets adapted and used across the organization, and as the years just go by, it is our responsibility just not to ensure that the proactive security controls are in place, but we know that no newer integrations are connecting without the proper security approval and guidance and things of that nature. So yeah, continuous monitoring is very important, even to the technical aspect of things. And the reason why this is so impactful is when things don't go our way. Isn't that right, Jagruti?
Oh my God, tell me about it, Shreya. Things don't go our way, and there's a lot that comes in. And I'm going to quickly talk about a little bit. This is an extensive topic, and I'm trying to cover this in a shot. But this presentation, I mean, this topic is a presentation by itself. So, a supply chain attack works by targeting a third party with access to an organization's system rather than trying to hack directly into the network. So, essentially, it occurs when a malicious outside entity infiltrates an organization's network to a third party application, tool, or services being used by the organization. So it is critical for an organization to realize that the first thing they need to do is identify their critical third parties. Following up with these critical third parties to see how their data has been impacted is super, super crucial. So let's go over some of the supply chain attacks, the well known ones that have happened in the past few months. I would say now it's been a year. Let's go with the first one, SolarWinds. So, SolarWinds, the hackers inserted malicious code into Orion's system. Most software providers regularly send out updates to their system, whether it's fixing a bug or adding new features. SolarWinds is no exception. So, in March of 2020, SolarWinds unwittingly sent out software updates to its customers that included the hacked code. The code created a backdoor to customers' information technology system, which the hackers then used to install even more malware that helped them spy on companies and organizations. Pretty devastating was it, and it was very impactful. Um, and everybody was scrambling about it. There's also a lot of advisories that came out during that time. Let's talk about the next one, Log4j. Log4j is an open source Java based logging utility widely used by enterprise applications and cloud services. Several companies use Log4j libraries worldwide to enable logging and to configure a wide set of applications. The Log4j flaw allows hackers to run any code on vulnerable machines or hack into their applications directly using Log4j framework. There was a security advisory to address a remote code execution vulnerability affecting Log4j version 2.0. A remote attacker could exploit this vulnerability to take control of an affected system. This literally got a lot of organizations thinking because it was so ingrained in the fabric and everywhere within the enterprise level that even the patches that were released by Apache were not sufficient, and there were multiple patches that needed to be followed up on. Anyway, let's go to the next one, which is the Spring Foreshell. Spring Foreshell is a critical vulnerability in the Spring framework, an open source platform for Java-based application development. Because 60% of developers use Spring for their main Java applications, many applications were potentially affected. The specific exploit requires the application to run on Tomcat as a WAR deployment. The nature of this vulnerability was more general, but there may have been multiple ways to exploit it. This is probably the one that came up really big, very fairly recently. Let's go to the next one, which is about Okta. So, Okta detected an unsuccessful attempt to compromise the account of a customer support engineer working for a third party provider. After a thorough analysis of these claims, they concluded that a small percentage of customers, I think approximately 2.5%, have potentially been impacted and whose data may have been viewed or acted upon. Again, they reached out to the concerned customers that have been impacted. And last but not the least, and my heart goes to Ukraine. It is hard to believe that even now we have wars around the globe, and our and it's very difficult in this time and age for us to even think about it. But these geopolitical issues bring light to global organizations that operate or support out of war-torn zones and regions. How do we make sure that the business continuity is going on, or rather we can even help the people who are stuck in these war-torn regions, how to get them out of that area? And if any of our services or tools or third parties have been impacted, that is also very crucial. So it is imperative for any organization to follow up with their critical third parties to ensure that the organization data is not impacted when any of these supply chain attacks happen and the business continuity and services is maintained. And so, knowing your third parties, having a set process and an incident management and incident follow up, um, incident response follow up, procedure and process developed by any organization is very, very important. It helps us get understanding if our or any organization's data has been impacted, and if it is impacted, to what level has been impacted, and what are some of the remediation or steps that the third parties have taken to secure it or to mitigate it. But why do we do this again?
We do this to keep our organization safe and secure. Information security is the process and tools that's designed and utilized to protect sensitive business information from modification or disruption or even destruction. Now, information security and cybersecurity, they are often confused. Information security is a crucial part of cybersecurity, but is used exclusively for ensuring the security of our data. As we continue to evolve in this industry, our data is all over the place, and our sole job is policing force. Now, this is not always easy, and it involves a lot of work that we have already described. To protect the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of the data, we need to follow international standards, industry best practices, and with the help of tools, technologies, and vendors. There are numerous tools out there in the market, and some of like Salesforce, which is a customer relationship management software, Office 365, which is subscription services offered by Microsoft, adding to the Microsoft Office product line. Box, used for cloud based content management, collaboration, and file sharing for the business. And there's Slack, our favorite, messaging program designed for the workplace. Google Workspace, which is collection of cloud computing, productivity, and collaboration tools, softwares, and products. There are also a ton of security tools to protect the organization's network, critical infrastructure, and sensitive data from attacks. Just a few examples, something like CrowdStrike, which is cloud delivered endpoint protection to unify next generation antivirus, endpoint detection and response, and also a 24/7 threat hunting service. There's Beyond Trust, which provides privilege access management to protect against data breaches, which could be related to stolen credentials, misuse privileges, and compromised remote access. The Sentinel one, which provides threat detection, hunting, and response features to discover vulnerabilities and really like protect the IT operations. And then we have Splunk, which is like a SIM solution, security information and event management for real time traffic analysis and historical searches for threat data. So, Jagruti, what happens next?
That's a good question. So we have done all the due diligence on the supplier, the technical reviews, and everything has been done. But third-party risk management, holistically, the entire life cycle, is just not security. There are multiple other teams that are involved. So procurement or sourcing personnel help the business identify potential third parties. They may provide support in contracts to ensure appropriate due diligence is conducted. They are the one that kind of make sure that the different stakeholders are involved, The security reviews, the privacy reviews, legal reviews have been conducted. So this is another very big organization outside of security that is important when we are onboarding or looking at a third party application services and tools. The next one is privacy. And privacy is so important in this day and age with so many data privacy laws coming out. It helps in identifying some processor requirements. They also help in looking at privacy regulations such as GDPR and what are some of the requirements attached to it which related to third parties. And then we can't forget our partners, which is the legal team, which is involved in both the process as an advisor and escalation resource and to approve certain contract obligations, and from both sides, from third parties and from the organization side. They're less involved into day-to-day operations dealing with vendor management, but they really are crucial when the onboarding and then termination process. But along with these partners, and Shreya has already gone over so much detail, additional security teams such as application security, vulnerability management, CISA, and more would be involved. And without them, we wouldn't be able to onboard these third parties. And Shreya has gone a lot detail in it. So once we are all aligned on the process, it gets approved. Okay. So there is a saying, where there is smoke, there is fire. But really, for us, where there is data smoke, there is a business fire. Jobs of information security organizations are to focus on data. Our mission is to protect the data, not just our data, but also our customers' data, because that's our commitment to our customer. And as you can see, a lot goes in before a tool, technology gets approved for use in an organization. There's a holistic, multiple myriads of things that we have to look at. And once it's security approved, what happens next, Shreya?
It's alive. But now that it's alive, we already saw how we went through a very lengthy process. How do we really expedite this process, as companies continue to scale? And that leads me to my next talking point around zero trust. As you can imagine, the amount of time and effort it's taken enterprise security to really approve a technology, we really want to be proactive. This is done by following zero trust, where the fundamental concept is never trust, always verify. And I'm aware in the industry that everyone says they have a silver bullet for zero trust. I can tell you there is no such thing. We will dive a little deeper, but NIST CSF, which is the National Institute for Standards and Technology, more specifically the Cybersecurity Framework, actually classifies this zero trust architecture with a special procedure, which is NIST 800-207. And if you have a day free, go ahead and read it. It's lengthy, informative, but the basic crux is you have an asset and a policy decision and enforcement point, and you are trying to access corporate application or resources. At face value, that seems very easy, but actually, it is very complex. I know I mentioned that zero trust is complex, but if it is implemented correctly, it can definitely enhance the security posture of any organization. So, to begin this journey, to begin the zero trust journey, we first have to identify our users. We need to always follow multi factor authentication. Data loss prevention techniques should be in place to prevent PII and organizations' confidential information to never be compromised. Insider threats. Now, this could be negligent or even intentional, but both scenarios can compromise any company's intellectual properties, which is why it is such an important function in the zero trust model. Good security awareness trainings and acceptable use policies must be in place for any organization. Activity logs. These are mission critical. But not just that, these logs need to be correlated to a single pane of glass, like a SIM solution. And then our SIM solution needs to be smart, which is why we need good threat intelligence. Privilege access management, such as restricting administrative rights, allow them to do their work while ensuring our security controls are in place. Sorry, actually missed a point, so I'm going to go back. So at this point, we've identified our users, but we do also need to know about our corporate assets versus personal devices, which is why certificates and PKIs are very important. This is how we demarcate between bring your own devices and corporate assets. Do we just allow our users to do anything they want on their machines? Absolutely not. I covered this, but privilege access management, which is restricting these rights while allowing them to do our work, but also ensuring that all the security controls are in place. All this really stems from compliance. I mean, like there has to be certain requirements, right? When you're talking about confidential information, malware and antivirus protection needs to be installed on every single system to provide endpoint security, which leads us to system protection. Now, these are sort of retroactive approaches, and if all other controls fail, we can still continue to protect our assets. And the same goes for system protection. Email security is very important because in today's day and age, email is the primary threat factor. Phishing campaigns, they need to be conducted at a regular cadence. And users need to be made aware of the dangers caused by clicking on unknown URLs. It could be exposing sensitive information. It could even be downloading malicious software that can infect the entire corporate network. And I spoke a little bit earlier before this business email compromise is still top of mind of CISOs and security professionals around the world, as this is the most attacked landscape in the industry. All of this is supported by the security governance structure, from policies to standards to control mapping, and ensuring alignment across all these tool chains is really how we can identify and reinforce our policy decision and enforcement. So, as you can all see, zero trust is actually very complex and requires multiple domains to be active to effectively support the zero trust architecture. Jagruti, any parting thoughts?
Whew, this was a lot, Shreya. That's a lot. And I think zero trust by itself is a conversation, a talk by itself. And covering it in such a short time, hats off to you. Thank you so much, Shreya, for that. So, from all the things that enterprise security does, from proactive work of vetting our third parties, checking their security postures, their technical reviews, and the stakeholder engagements that make sure that we are aligned on how things can be improved, and the company's eventual journey to zero trust. All these things are just so massive. It's incredible the amount of work that we have to do, that it really makes us feel like we are Batwomen. And with this, I'm going to end the talk, but we are open to have a Q&A if you have any questions for us.
Jagriti, so I'm monitoring the Q&A, and I think I'm going to send the first question over to you. I'm just going to read that out. So, thank you for giving us an overview of a day-to-day life for what you do in enterprise security. What is the biggest threat vector as it pertains to our suppliers today?
The biggest threat vector that if I have to talk about, is data at the risk of compromise. So I feel data is the most important asset for any company. And from a third party security perspective, that's the biggest threat we have. But along with it, what necessarily has brought into limelight by supply chain attacks is most third parties do not have the capability to actually handle any incidents that are happening. They are inadequate. A lot of inadequacy in handling incident response is what we have found. So that's another threat. And then the third is unauthorized access to our data. That's one of the biggest one. And thank you for sharing that, Shreya. I think I see another questions that we can probably talk about. Let me look at it real quick. Um, okay. The question is that what is the biggest challenge in having to continuously review the applications that are have a scope creep? Good one.
Okay, I could take that one. So, as businesses scale, scope creep is very common. As the tools and the technologies they really adapt in the organization, I think it very quickly surpasses the implementation scope. But as security professionals, we definitely need to ensure that the security posture of our organization is never lowered. And this can be solved by early collaborations with the business owners and through clear transparency, rock solid partnership. And this is to ensure that security is not just bolted in, but it is already secure by design, which offers organizations defense in depth.
That's wonderful to know. I see there is another question
I
that
think
has.
Jagriti, you'll handle this better than me. So let me ask this to you.
Okay.
I am curious to know about the journey of a woman in the cybersecurity field.
Wow. Okay. That's a good one. So, I think I've been uh, in the third party risk management field for a while and been in the cybersecurity for more than a decade. And I feel it's changed so much. Like 10 years ago, uh, I think I did not feel I was listened or people heard me, and I felt very like I had to prove myself by overcompensating. But I feel things have changed, times have changed, and at Workday, I'm really grateful to the leadership we have that helps us, put our best foot ahead, encourages all the women, and empower us to do the best for us. Um, Workday also celebrates diversity, inclusion, equity, and it's a huge part of the fabric of the organization. We're really grateful to the leaders within Workday.
I think I 100% agree with everything you've said there, Jagruti. Just wanted to add one point. We are women and we can do everything, right? I mean, not just cybersecurity. Like, even in our professional and even personal lives, I feel women are like natural caretakers where every decision has been really well thought through. It almost always involves, taking a few steps back, really weighing out the pros and cons, and then making the decisions that are best for that scenario.
You said it. That's perfect. I was just monitoring the questions that have come up. I think there's one more question that somebody put in that if the business is using the conventional questionnaire, which the third party also has, does it cover the possible vulnerabilities? Is that not a loophole? No, I totally agree, and that's a very great question. So, we typically the questionnaire also consists of to have them ask them about had they have any supply chain, any of the supply chain attacks that have had in the past. Has you been impacted by it? Can you include like a incident response letter along with your questionnaire that gives more details of what the impact was and how did you contain it or what the remediation was? And to your point, you sometimes just believe what the suppliers are responding in the questionnaire, but then you can use continuous monitoring tool, which is a third party tool that you can use to glean more information on real time on those third parties. I hope that answered the question.
I see another one, and I will read that out loud. In today's world where new technology is brought in every day, is it better to stick to a more reliable, safe application, missing out on new updates, or to get on with a new third party that provides everything new? So I can provide my insight into this. So it firstly it depends on the business use case. Just because something looks flashy at face value, no, we should definitely not adapt that without the risk evaluation, the security assessments, technical security reviews, and like really testing it out. So any any third party or any tool or any technology, I can understand the business use case of really implementing it, but it should not go through without the proper security guidance and approval. And this is because think of security as an ally to the business. We are here to support the business. So whatever the business wants, but also doing our due diligence and performing all the assessments that need to be done.
I can also add to this that most organizations also have like architecture review boards that kind of go and see if are you just bringing in a new application because it's fancy and new, or are you like looking at whatever exists? No organization wants like four password walls. If you already have a password wall existing, you use that one and not try to bring a fancy new one.
Good point. I see one more popping up, Jagruti, and I'm going to read that back to you. So thank you for such an informative presentation on enterprise security. With the massive number of questions and the lengthy approval process, how do you combat with the business saying security is a blocker?
And that's exactly why we should go back. That's a good question, but I think the slide about being transparent about your work, like what is the work that you do, bringing spreading the awareness with the business that why are we doing this due diligence with the third parties, what is the data that this third party is hosting or storing, and what is the risk it's posing to the organization is very important. Being transparent. telling the business that we are collaborating together with you and not against you is very important. This is a collaboration together to keep organizations secure and make sure that the third parties are not bringing in unnecessary risks, introducing them. And I have seen with my partnership with the business units that I've been working with, they're more and more open and they're becoming a little more attuned and to their security, um, just honing on into their security skills, understanding that okay, this third party doesn't necessarily have a SOC 2 type 2, so let me not like use this third party, go with someone else. So that has been a pretty good change I see, by bringing in the awareness and telling the business we're working together with you. All right, so are there any more questions? I'm looking at that. So somebody asked, like, what is your day-to-day enterprise security looks like? What would it entail?
I can answer that one. So I pretty much wake up in the morning and chaos starts right there. Just getting the kids ready and sending them off to school. I put on my cup of coffee, and when the watch reminds me that there is a particular meeting I need to go to in 15 minutes, so that's how I typically start the day. Join my meeting with my coffee, move to the next meeting, and then the next. At least 3 times in a week, there's a lot of texting that happens to the husband to convince him to go pick up the kids. Because, of course, right, the meeting has gone over and my presence is vital. So that's how it goes. Meetings, coffee, they go hand in hand, repeatable process. And then the laptop finally gets turned off way past the designated time. And the funny thing about this all is that it almost always happens on a no meeting day.
Or the supply chain attacks happen during the vacation time or during the holidays. I
Yeah.
get it. Right, so I see a couple more questions that have rolled in. So one is, thank you so much for the detailed and informative presentation. What are some of the prerequisites required to get into enterprise security for beginners? I think there's a very good question. So, enterprise security has multiple uh, areas within it. Depending on how technical you want to get, or do you want to do more on a risk management side, third party risk management could be one of the areas that you can get expertise in. Um, Largely, right now, shared assessment, which is like a non agnostic, like vendor agnostic, um, you know. Um, uh, I just lost my thought over there, but they are the industry known. They develop a lot of industry known standards for third party risk management. That's a good place to start. There are also a lot of risk management courses within SANS that have come up that you can take. And I know at the master's level also there are most of the masters in cybersecurity now cover like risk management related work. And the technical aspect, I think Shreya can give you more information.
Yeah, sure. So, like, if you want to get like a really overall picture on security, like for beginners, I think Security Plus is a good course. It's not very detailed, but definitely covers a high-level overview of many different topics. And of course, if you want to take it further, then CISSP is supposed to be the golden cert for security.
Cool. I think we have one more question to go, and this is probably going to be the last question before we end it here. Um, why do you decide to choose a career in cybersecurity over another technical field?
I can start us off. Um, so my career sort of did not begin with cybersecurity. I was more like a network engineer, part of the NOC, and then I started getting into more, SIM solutions to really build monitoring and alerting, which led me to my next role as a senior systems engineer because the environment was Linux based, and we needed to do a lot of troubleshooting and collaborating with multiple teams. And then an opportunity came up where within security, where you were building a robust monitoring solution but for security tools. So that's pretty much how I got into cybersecurity. So the point I'm saying is there are many technical fields, but there's a huge overlap across all of them. So just because you're like a network engineer doesn't know you don't know security, because security is sort of woven into each and every technical domain. And the reason why I like cybersecurity so much is because it's a niche field. You can never shut down the book and be like, oh, I know everything. Things change every day, and you, as part of the profession, you need to constantly keep yourself updated.
You nailed it, Shreya. That was amazing. You captured all the points. And I think I agree that Security Plus would be a good stepping point if you want to get. But if you see my journey, I feel like cybersecurity, just like Shreya, it just happened to me that I started working on Solaris Security Admin as a Solaris Security Admin. I just knew Solaris as an operating system. And from there, I never looked back. It was amazing. All right. So with this, we are going to end this talk. Thank you so much for joining our talk today, to listening to us, and please feel free to provide any feedback. You can also add us on LinkedIn. We both, me and Shreya, both are on LinkedIn. I also wanted to take time to thank women in cybersecurity to giving us an opportunity to present today. With that, I'm going to end the call. Any last thought, Shreya?
No, I think you covered it all. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining, and thank you, WiCyS, for giving us this opportunity.
Thank you so much, guys.